This is normally where my consultant got to concern with talking a little bit more about mental health. So I will try to do just this. I'm not going to spend as much time on this because, correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of us who will be seeing people with a perinatal period about mental health medication usually after the GP has already seen this, or it's been referred on to us. Would we be diagnosing or reviewing OCD, things of that nature? So I'll just try and pick out some key points for you on these slides as we go through them. The current data in terms of prevalence in our area in Lincolnshire, this is old data, but it is the most up-to-date data. COVID had huge impact on the layer reports and statistical analysis coming through. So at the moment, these are the most up-to-date reports. But you can see from the numbers that as a perinatal team, we would have been able to see every single person within those categories. Our focus is on the SMI, postpartum psychosis, and the more severe depressive or anxiety disorder, or where there is high risk associated with those disorders. We wouldn't necessarily be able to see and review the caseload every single person in this relation. So in terms of severe postnatal depression, this is very distinct to baby blues. Baby blues is a sadness and a tearfulness that usually lasts for up to 2 weeks, and it doesn't interfere with functioning. It doesn't stop people from doing the normal daily routine. Where there are severe symptoms, where it is stopping them from getting out of bed, we don't need to be waiting 2 weeks that are going to go in with suspected postnatal depression. That is a let's action it and let's get some kind of advice for this person. Peak presentation is usually 2 to 4 weeks and then 10 to 14 weeks postpartum. We do sometimes see a bit of peak around returning to work stages when every time that person's going back, or when breastfeeding is stopping. So with a year postpartum, we can sometimes see depression symptoms at those points as well. Talk a little bit more about physical health reviews, but just as a prompt, making sure that we are ruling out cases of high profile murders in, that we are ruling out leaving years that may also be contributing to a presentation. Doesn't happen very often, but in the last 2.5 years since I've been with the trust, I've had 2 patients I've been working with, that have been diagnosed hypothyroidism. And actually we needed to get them on some thyroxine, and then I actually was able to stop the antidepressants. So it sounds obvious, but again, we are all really busy, and sometimes the obvious things get missed. But there is a good prognosis for postnatal depression, but we've got the right treatment strategies in place. But we do need to be thinking about risks and attachment when we're talking about mum and baby, particularly when babies don't stop crying when we get something. Is mum able to put baby down safely and take herself out to a different room for 5 minutes? Or is there a risk of mum taking out intervention for the baby? And there are things we need to consider when we're talking about low wound and that period. Postpartum psychosis is often very different to a psychosis outside of the perinatal period. It can vary and fluctuate significantly. And this is one of the indicators where the ward staff are telling us there's a problem, the midwives are telling us there isn't, the partner's saying, well, she was all right an hour ago, but something's happened there. So that variation is one of the key indicators for postpartum psychosis. It is very frightening and very confusing, both the person that's experiencing it, but also from the people around them. There is a risk of people who have bipolar and schizophrenia conditions, individuals who have postpartum psychosis, but there is also a number of people that will present having had those psychotic symptoms previously. And that can be a huge shock to the system and the family. as well as remember staff. There is also this increased risk of suicide and psychosis because of risky behaviours, because of them not being able to differentiate between their experiences and share experiences of those around them. And people who have had postpartum psychosis previously have a 1 or 2 chance of it happening again in subsequent pregnancies. So again, when we're thinking about our green flag with families, somebody who has had postpartum psychosis, even if they've been absolutely fine for years, if they have another pregnancy, please refer to us so we can support you that monitoring in the lead up to birth and in the post pregnancy. In terms of numbers of postpartum psychosis presentations, 50% will present by day 7, and 95% will present by day 19. So the longer postpartum, it's the postpartum journey and the estimates of that. And there's just a table of risk in terms of previous pregnancies and risk of postpartum psychosis for bipolar and schizoaffective disorder as well. You don't need to remind the numbers, just remembering that there's increased risk that these other people really would like to care for. Perinatal OCD affects around 2% of pregnancies and 2 to 3% of women postnatally. Quite often the obsessions and compulsions are in relation to direct care of the baby, all around germs and others interacting with the baby and the home environment. It could be for those that have pre-existing OCD diagnosis. Symptoms can both improve and can worsen during pregnancy. So for some women, pregnancy is a huge relief for them. For others, things just get worse and worse and more difficult. And there can be common themes and obsessive thoughts around harm to baby and harm happening to baby. One of the key things here is that those thoughts are not things that mum wants to have. So she might have thoughts of throwing baby down the stairs. She might have thoughts of smothering the baby, but she might actually have an intent to doing this. And that can be very frightening for mums, because they have no intent to do anything, but these thoughts just don't go away and stick. So when we're talking about risk, it is often helpful if you can ask the question, okay, having these thoughts, that is really scary. Do you have any intent to do that? Because that helps mum to start to manage that she has got some control and that we understand that she's trying her best. And sometimes that assurance and validation to mum is one of the best things you can do with your first contact with. Eating disorders is also a really key concern during pregnancy. Again, some patients will have their eating disorder is actually quite protected by a pregnancy. So an ADL1 patient was last week who had been brought in on a section, not caring for herself, not eating and drinking, and ready to end her life. She found out she was pregnant and she's happy to have breakfast, she's happy to have lunch, she's happy to run her own food and everything. Because she wants to improve this baby. Her risk period is going to be once she's delivered. Because baby won't be inside, baby can survive on the own. Baby doesn't believe it, I can get back to my disorder disorders. So it can be very protective, but we still need to be keeping an eye out on having support. It is also associated with increased risk of postnatal depression and that risk of relapse in the postnatal period. So things might be going well during the pregnancy, but at the 6-week postnatal check, catching up on what food and fluid inside is really important. It's tricky though. Who's a mom? Who's my snake? Do you actually eat properly as a person? Because you've got this human demand on each human, you wants all your time and your brain is programmed to respond to it. So being able to ask, what is stopping you? Have you been able to prepare meals? Has part of meals? Have you looked at batch cooking? Have you got cereal bars in every room? So that the second baby just closes the eye, you don't even have to go in the way, you just get that cereal bar automatically and enjoy it. Have you got water bottles in every room? Some of those practical conversations are really important because it is so difficult. as the postnatal period progresses, baby settles into a routine, mum settles into a routine, and quite often that establishing of routine sees an improvement in lots of ways and lots of symptoms. But we do need technologies to and we're going to have a conversation about alcohol and substance misuse in the brain. So there's a risk again of relapse in the postnatal period, and again, people with substance misuse in pregnancy can be protected because they want to look after their baby. They may stop, they may reduce. We work and we have set pathways with a lot of the substance misuse services across Lincolnshire. And where we have somebody with an existing known diagnosis of mental health illness, who also has a substance misuse problem, we will joint work with those services to support children with those. Quite a few of you have put for your outcomes from today is understanding what things have gone wrong in the past. Embrace is an organisation in the UK that looks at audit and reporting to identify trends of mental health care during the perinatal period. And they issue a report every 2 to 3 years. And the new report actually came out a week ago. I haven't finished updating my slides, but there is a lot of common repeating recommendations that have come through Embrace over the years. The risk factors for poor outcomes of mental health in pregnancy and the postnatal period focus a lot on communication and having appropriate information sharing while somebody is into the care of different organisations. And to be thinking about the future from the point that something is happened. Somebody has been made an attempt on their life whilst pregnant. There is no too soon occasion to start saying what happens if there's a future pregnancy. It's simply to always include their mind. Looking particularly around experience of loss and how difficult that can be for individuals and their families. And looking at making sure grades of success are appropriate for those that have a perinatal mental health emergency. We support our crisis team when it comes to managing postpartum and psychosis through training and active support and development. But that is why any postpartum psychosis which come to our team direct, and we will respond within working hours to make sure that we have support for the sector is looking after this. There were a few new messages from the 21-22 report that looks at some things around self-harm risk in pregnancy and postpartum period, how that can be an indicator of behaviours going forward. And that sometimes where there are multiple comorbidities, we might lose the focus on actually what is the priority of care for this person. What is the thing we need to be focusing on? And although we are not involved directly in the care for women, this is not also in the highest level. So one of the examples from Embrace was about gatekeeping. So I'll just let you read this case example from Embrace. And this is the reason behind our message. If you have any potential queries or possibilities of somebody suffering with mental health in the perinatal period, please contact us and have that discussion with us. It isn't about numbers. We don't have an assessment score that needs to be met. We look at holistic approach to our assessments based on previous risk, based on clinical presentation, based on current situation practice. And we are happy that we make that decision. You don't have to stick with that responsibility if you think that they're completely need this to go forward. Where we are in doubt, we will offer an assessment to find out more information so you can know what's fine with that person. Not all of our assessments that we offer are sort of people on our caseload. We may have other areas of support that we can find for those symptoms. But if you are already down, please give us a call. Now the bit is open. I'd like to look about the list. Before we do that, it's important to understand what was in the pregnancy. We're talking about risk of complications, but what's our baseline risk for any pregnancy? Spontaneous abortion happens in 20 to 20% of pregnancies, and most of miscarriages happen in the first trimester. Spontaneous malformation is happening in the general population of pregnant women at about 2 to 4%. Before we start thinking about mental health diagnosis, that can also increase these numbers, as well as the mental health medication that can increase these numbers as well. There is no sign of pregnancy. And that's a horrible thing to say to somebody who's just found out they're pregnant with this level of baby that they're trying to lose. But it's also being honest. There is always a risk in pregnancy. And mental health illness itself is an independent risk factor. Congenital malformation is so that's in the mental health. As well as each individual mental health condition having additional risk factors. So what we have to do is balance. The risk of relapse and the occurrence of relapse may ultimately be more harmful to a mother with an illness in mind and subsequently to her child than continuing an effective medication that helps her with damages tested. I can see a lot of personal journey, so I know I'm preaching to the converted. But it is a balancing act. And deprescribing is still a really key factor and priority across many platforms for conditions. We're not alone in deprescribing being a priority. But I think we should be very appropriately deprescribing. If somebody that's stable during a pregnancy is now discriminated to take away that judgment over one of the responsibility, is now the right time. And how do we do it? Do we just stop? We still have the families coming through 2 to 7 months on books to stopping all medication on pregnancy because it might cause the baby. And mums are severely declining in the mental health because of that can take weeks, if not months, to unpick and get back to a stable point. So we do have to think about the benefits to mum and baby and medication as well as the risks to mum and baby. And to understand where does that risk come from. The Perinatal has its own risks when it's used at therapeutic dose, but is severely cardiotoxic and because that's will take an overdose. We've all got our big three, valproate, prevalence, and high rate. I think we're going to end up with every antiepileptic children, really honestly, at some point. But it needs review. If mum's already pregnant, mum's already had a baby, has already had exposure. Nothing we do now, today, is going to change the exposure that's already happened. Where we go forward is we're going to consider plans of medication. We don't suddenly stop the medication because we still have to think about the mental health stability. Yes, we will be comparing as soon as we want. If those medicines are for mental health condition. Equally, if these medicines are for the purpose of managing epilepsy, that referral needs to be going into the neurologist team. And again, we have had referrals, not London without much pregabalin, or at the start of procedures. That is not one place to say, do we stop it and what do you do with it? It's a very specialist women in as well. You will all be aware of the national guidelines for NICE looking at deprescribing medicines that have dependency on withdrawal. Particularly when we're talking about benzodiazepines, but it also applies to antiepileptics and antidepressants. There are some suggested schedules, and it is more about the principles involved. We shouldn't be stopping abruptly because that not only reduces the risk of discontinuation of symptoms, but it also increases the risk of sudden relapse. So bringing things down with a stepwise approach ensuring that there are regular reviews in between those steps for reduction, being honest about what is this person's relapse signature and being able to look out for it. Are they living on their own? Are they living with family? Can someone else help when things aren't quite right? And we may need to go much slower for high risk pregnancies or for people that have been in treatment for a long time. I was involved with seeing a planning place for a lady, she wasn't pregnant, but a lady that had been on Razor 10 milligrams for 21 weeks. And there was an initial plan from primary care to stop that to 10 milligrams twice a day for a week, 10 milligrams once a day for a week, and then stop. And they wanted why the stadium was really exactly this week one, it was reducing regime. So we put a slightly longer 10-year plan in place, looking at reducing by 1 milligram every 4 weeks if the lady was in the help. If not, leave it 4 weeks and see how we get on. So the longer somebody's been on medication, sometimes we do need longer tailoring regimes for that. And I'll give another example for prescribing. Again, this is from Embrace. There are significant risks of pain medication during pregnancy when you've not been planned for what happens. So what do you do? If I have a breath shower happens, here is a letter with a nice knowledge summary on my professionally isolated process for the Depends what we might have in referring to this next time we get asked something about specific habits. Excellent. It's a really well structured document. It talks through the different scenarios of somebody's on a nice depressive right now and they become pregnant. If somebody's during pregnancy that gives a new presentation profession, how to pick on medication, and also about medication in case there's a period. As with a lot of nice guidance around mental health conditions, it maybe gives us a collective of options to look at rather than here's one answer, here's your next answer. But that is because it was very much about making a patient-centered approach. We couldn't ask comorbidities, we couldn't ask other medications, we couldn't ask gender tolerance effects. When it comes to selecting as excellent in the pregnancy period, we don't do anything different in terms of selection compared to the standard population. So first line would be a most desirable because it has the same efficacy or similar efficacy to tricyclics, but doesn't tends to be better tolerated. So actually is our first line of efficacy during pregnancy. We have absolutely no problems. Research will be continued if there is a clinical need identified, and as long as the lady is aware of the potential risks during pregnancy. When we talk about risks during pregnancy, we're thinking about baby's development, organogenesis, primarily or majority of organogenesis occurs in the first trimester. But we're also thinking about what's the risk to mom during pregnancy. Does this medication increase the risk of anything else happening? When we're looking at anti-septics, particularly, we might think about gestational diabetes and functional control. When we're thinking then about the period leading up to delivery and the point of delivery, we're thinking about discontinuation effects in the newborn. We're thinking about the risk of postpartum pregnancy within. We might be thinking about assisted prenuptial hypertension in midwives. There may be need for monitoring periods, so involving the midwife and midwifery teams, involving the obstetric teams with prescribing decisions is really important. so they can be aware and think about it. But when it comes to actually what antidepressants are being okay with, if there was a need for something, surgery is a really good choice. Unfortunately, when it comes to things, for example, like epilepsy, all of the SSRIs would be listed as increasing risk of seizure. When it comes to increasing risk of bleeding, I'm already on aspirin to prevent clots. All of the SSRIs increase risk of bleeding. We don't always have the numerical figures for all these risks to work out is this cumulative risk of therapy or not. Sometimes it is about, are we monitoring for it, are we looking for it, and do we know what to do with it? Interestingly, I know that there has been across different PCNs discussions around SSRI review and the risk of maternal postpartum hemorrhage. SSRI use is not on any of the algorithms provided nationally for assessing postpartum risk. You know that it is a risk, and the MHRA have alerts all over the place, but when it comes to actually the Royal College acknowledging that risk, they consider it to be far lower than other risk factors like weight and previous bleeding. And interestingly, although it quotes SSRIs and SNRIs, it doesn't include metazapine on that list, prenatal postpartum hemorrhage. It's study that was included. We do start searching people on that product use rate. We do start searching people what they're doing after down that story. It is about having a conversation with that person, understanding the risks. It's also often about liaising with the obstetrician team and asking them when you've got the advice on that person's history, and if they have any input. The majority of the time, it's about saying, do what you need to do and make sure I'm doing it. When it comes to thinking about antidepressants and breastfeeding, sertraline is again our first choice of SSRI. It has the lowest the lowest passage into plasma, and the subsequent effects are very minimal. As long as baby is born at term and baby is physically well, and they're able to metabolize that medication successfully, and they're able to feed, there's no problems with latching, absolutely conception. Fluoxetine is also a really appropriate choice in pregnancy, but it has the highest transfer of SSRIs in that. It also has, go back to our waste of pharmacology, the longest half-life. So the risk of accumulation in the DNA is also the highest. There's all these risk factors, but actually there's very few case reports of this actually leading to any harm or potential harm in newborn babies. But historically, many perinatal services don't recommend fluoxetine in pregnancy if somebody is going to be breastfeeding, unless they have been through other medication that weren't tolerated, weren't effective, and we know that fluoxetine is our most appropriate choice for this person. We need to understand food history of responses, but that also includes the question, how long is this medicine given for and at what dose? Do you know the minimum effective dose of sertraline? What's that? 100? I don't know on the 100 milligrams of sertraline. 150 on 50, okay? Anybody in agreement, disagree? But I'm unfortunate to make some decisions now just to keep you awake. Who votes for 100 being the minimum effective dose of sertraline? Who votes for 50 being the minimum effective dose of sertraline? Who is now confused and abstaining? 50 milligrams of sertraline is considered a minimum effective dose. For people with prolonged symptoms and people with severe symptoms, then they need it. The minimum effective dose doesn't mean it's going to fix everything. And what we're talking about, what even is an expectation of an antidepressant? Does an antidepressant resolve depression? We've got some smiles now. Some people are reflecting. Antidepressants need to have an evidence base for reduction of the severity and frequency and intensity of symptoms. They do not need to completely resolve symptoms to be deemed effective. Antidepressants on their own in moderate to severe depression will not fix this. Antidepressants where there is a history of contributing factor of trauma are not going to fix this. They might make things easier, they might make things more tolerable, or may allow a little bit more functionality to return, but they're not going to be an answer on their own to the majority of people. They can make a huge difference in those first couple of months, and they can allow people to maybe have capacity, energy, resource, focus and concentration to avoid the psychological violence. But they are not going to be an answer entirely on their own. So we do need to be thinking about, when we're talking about previous treatments and effectiveness, was it given for long enough? Was the dose titrated? How long do antidepressants take to work? Always. Oh, we've got a big difference. Who's right? Antidepressants have their predominance, their initial side effects often present within the first 10 to 14 days. Their beneficial effects in mood disorders show between weeks 2 and week 6 as optional effects. For anxiety-related disorders, we are looking at up to 12 weeks to see the maximum effect. So let's break this down into person speak. When we're starting somebody on Searchly, what we're actually saying to them is that you're going to feel good and awful for the first 2 weeks. Your mood might start to improve, after the first month or so, but we might have to give it 3 months before it starts affecting your panic and your anxiety and making you sweat from your own life. That's actually really tough to expect somebody to persist with unless we are telling them. A lot of antidepressants, when I do case reviews, are actually stopped within the first 2 weeks because a lot of it is around stopped because of the progress, like nausea, like stomach upset, like headaches for Searchly. If we can encourage people to persist or to reduce the dose from 50 to 25 to make that a little bit more tolerable, then it can allow people to continue with treatment options in the longer term. And quite often, I'd probably say, put a number on it, probably 20 to 25% of the advice I'm asked to give is actually, can you just go back to Searchly when you're trying? It does need a little bit of encouragement, it does need a little bit of explanation to the ladies that I'm working with. But quite often it's actually, let's just go back to the first thing because we never properly tried it sufficiently in the first place. So considerations for breastfeeding might influence the decision of your pregnancy, but also being aware of the different stages, the different periods of pregnancy as well. Hands up who has used the false information leaflet, especially suggesting information. Who wants? Okay. Hands up who has never even heard of that and has no idea what I'm talking about. Be brave. Thank you very much. I will show you these resources. If we talk about antidepressants and anxiety, first line is CBT. Always. In pregnancy, the risk of benefit is slightly less than it is for depression. The first line is always CBT. And again, but it's the same principles. We're thinking about what are the current risks, what are the past risks, what's the economic symptoms, what's people's response been, and then thinking about our usual interactions with both disease and disease. And remembering our time to maximum effects and letting people know that this is the times that they're anticipating. I do often have reviews with people 6 weeks in. Sam, this isn't working, we need to change. And where I do have a strong relationship with some of our ladies, I'm able to say to them, do you remember what I said? Do you remember how long I said this would take to work? Oh, okay, we're going to give it another 6 weeks. Yeah. Well, we're not doing any harm right now and we want to tolerate it. Let's just see what happens. Let's see what the time that it needs. Let's not jump to anything. We are looking at long-term treatments when it comes to anxiety. And sometimes it is where benzodiazepines do have a really positive multiplier when it comes to managing anxiety in the short term and on an as required basis. Where we do have a need for symptom management once we're establishing the long-term treatment options, we may consider the avenues of benzodiazepines. Very limited number, limited frequency, maximum maybe 2 or 3 times down. Preference is to cover as it can because it's shorter acting, so it doesn't stay in the system as well. We don't like to use benzodiazepines in the 2-week period leading up to delivery because that can lead to floppy baby syndrome and complications with respiratory function at birth. And we do, where there has been established regular use, we do work very hard to reduce the amount of benzodiazepine prior to delivery. Unfortunately, what we know is that when we're tapering, we might need to go to a longer acting benzodiazepine to facilitate it. So it's a little bit contradictory, but it's about patient-centered decisions and having those conversations. Something might be prescribed benzodiazepine 3 times a day, but actually having these studies over the last week and using that as a baseline rather than what the prescription says. Equally, sometimes it's more frequent and more often than what the prescription says, but it's about working with that. Again, CBT is like a treatment for anxiety management and distress management. One of the key risks with any medicines that can cause sedation, particularly when benzodiazepines when we're talking about bleeding, is increased risk of SIDS, particularly parents losing pregnancy with their babies. Around a third of parents will have post-lactate with their children at around 3.4 mark. Quite many of them once. For some, it might be that is their choice, and that's an everyday occurrence. But the risks of co-sleeping, where the medication is sedated, and mum's breastfeeding, where the baby's sedated, mum's sedated, everybody falls asleep in bed, everybody's living in this. And it is important to let them know that. But then we've got some more holistic considerations to think about. I don't just think about mental health in the things of people and families with it. It's also a really useful now CKS and uncomfortable pregnancy. It talks through strategies for supplementation both for folates and for vitamin D. It talks about diet and exercise and the protective factors that can both have in mental health, but also during pregnancy. And the risks of smoking and alcohol during pregnancy because they are individualistic for pregnancy. And as I've already mentioned, just not losing track of when was the last time I separated anyone. Is this fatigue and low motivation and low mood actually rooted in an anemia or interest type of algorithm that we could be potentially doing something about might not be a really immunosuppressant? There might still be a need for antidepressant, but we can correct to have the permanent disease sort of things for. So in terms of information resources, BUMPS and UK TIS are the professional and public-facing version of the UK Dermatology Information Service. UK TIS has a helpline, and that looks at medicines during pregnancy. I have a little bit of information on medicines and the activation group. BUMPS is free to access. And this looks at all medicines in pregnancy, or I should say most. There isn't one for new option. There also is a amitriptyline. So there are a few things that they don't have. Within LPT, if you have anybody that's in the healthcare, we also subscribe to a platform of one choice in medication. And that looks specifically at mental health conditions and mental health medication. There is a section within that platform that looks at medicine pregnancy, both from a condition perspective, so we can look at some considerations for bipolar disorder, for example, pregnancy, but also individually simplify that might affect pregnancy at different stages. And they, although we're only able to share those with people who are paired, if they have treated evidence, we can always lead to it and show it. So that's where the choice of medication in front. It's also got a database called the Activate. That's made pure focuses on medicine relaxation. And again, it's set out as a monographic approach. It's free to access. It talks through what is known about transfer and the breast milk. It talks about where there is data for what that plasma concentration looks like in the baby. It also talks about what does that medication doing as a impact or support breastfeeding as well as then talking about any reports or studies that look at significant benefits in the baby. This is a really good resource that we utilise if you wanted to be looking for primary information for yourself. We'll also give you a couple of our top tips. Again, just replace the word for please primary care. Please feel free, I will share a PDF copy of this that will be shared after the event. And please feel free to share these top tips with all of your primary care colleagues that you're working with. And this just summarises the red flags and key messages around prescribing. So just before we do particularly I want to decide to say it's hungry. Thanks. 323, okay. Would you rather spend the last amount of time going to talk about case studies or having a look at your success? Or would you like to do both looking compatible and have a little bit active in the services? What's people's thinking? Is everybody happy to say a little bit beyond things like we'll do both. No decisions made. I'm going to meeting. So if you search bumps upon Google, and I'll show you how to access all of these through Google, to be honest, or any section of your choice. Bumps is set out as most of these resources are in a monograph format. And these are free to access. And you can access them as help professionals. You can share the links or advise people that you're working with to go and look them up on their own. You can sit side by side and get to them up in the smartphone and go through everything. And whatever works best. So if we were, I'm going to stick researching, because that's predominantly what we've spoken a lot about recently. The ghost section. This is what the monograph looks like. The little bit small. So what it does is it gives an overview of what has been medicine before, and it also gives a prompt that this has benefits for the condition that's being treated, which is really important. It talks about everything's question and answer, and it talks about what the risks may be. It also does, on some occasions, give the statistics, not many, but it talks about things in general concepts. Are there any alternatives? What if I prefer to take medication? And there is a prompt in there that we should not stop taking surgery without first speaking to a clinician with live GP sessions. It answers the questions for baby need extra monitoring. All babies in the UK, or all babies in England, will be offered a 20-week anonymous scans. And for the majority of medicines, there is no additional requirement for fetal monitoring beyond the standard 20-week scan. Such means one of those. It also talks about drug safety information and page talks with a couple of questions. So it is rather brief. Doesn't go into a lot of clinical detail, but it gives the key messages in an accessible way. And it does this for most of the medicines that we have in the UK. If we are to look at UK TIS, search meaning. Anyone can register, sorry, UK TIS, you do need a registration for subscription to access. It gives a summary at the start of the monograph, but it goes into a lot more detail about specific data. So if you do want specific information or to know exact numbers, You have got a subscription, it falls within the subscription to top space. If you have that within your practice or within your organisation and you're going to access you pay this, or you can give them on. And that's how planning is successful. The other resource side is that thread. Again, just literally put that thread and it's only one graph arrangement. Or you can just put that thread search me and we'll give people and that'll probably take you directly to that one. That search bar, just stick that one. So again, we have the summary. It talks about individual drug levels and the histories and the ranges that within this. As a benchmark, there's a general statement that if a drug has 10% or less transferring to breast milk, that's the acceptable level. There are some anomalies within that. There are some that might only have 1%, and we really don't want to use it. There are others that have 80% transfer, but there's absolutely no concern, so we're okay with it. But as a rough benchmark, 10% is what's usually spoken about. It talks about different levels. Then goes on to talk about levels within the baby as well as in breast milk. Talks about what those effects are on lifestyle infants. But it also then tells you actually what other case numbers that we're flying into. Is this a case number of 2 or is this a case number of 200,000? To show us actually how likely it is something to the document. But there's a lot of information certainly, but we do use it. Effects on lactation and on breast milk. And this is maybe something to think about when we're speaking about breastfeeding, because there is a risk of transfer to baby. But we also need to think about could there be a risk of this actually stopping breastfeeding if it's effective activity or functionality of breastfeeding in the young. So there is it's just another concept to think about. And then you also get your references, and if you really want to dig deeper and find out more information, I'll be able to post following this. But these are resources that I use on a daily basis. So we have a look at case studies. A little bit of conversation. Have a chat in pairs or threes with the people that are next to you. These are all real situations. So the question is, what's your plan? What's the reason for your plan? But also, what are you going to tell us in a minute? I will give warning, I am going to ask the people that haven't spoken yet to share their thoughts. So, 2 ladies on the end, can I ask you, what's your thoughts? What are you going to do when this lady is going to chat with you when you're running? Would it be because of the history of the psychosis with her and everything? Absolutely. Yeah. What else might you want to talk about? How difficult it is presently, and how to support it coping with the office. Yeah. She could have been amazing everything on the end, but actually she's got lots of the side is getting a little bit on it. And the patient had the sense, what were those symptoms that you had? Was it voices? Was it shadows? Was it in the dark that you saw going to be? People won't be able to share with you what themselves wasn't speaking of. Your brain was to say, is only that in that, or are you seeing it? She's like, yes, that was your share, you know. that can be a little bit more it is scary when somebody comes out and says next to me, something like, oh, and but if you are brave enough to ask those questions, people will take the brave areas very well. People are very honest. If you are given the right question, people will experience it. Then sometimes they can say a bit, which they will read about people's reactions. We still have a community factor of still looking at the house. And it's across the board because we don't have a lot of exposure to it. And people will take their guidance and their lead from the person that's following that information. So yes, absolutely, for back where they are now. What do you say to that person? I think we should be very just to be on the safe side, but you know, specialists. You need that consent. You have to have consent for them. Some people, and I've had these conversations in the last 3 months. Some people were really worried if they've not had a previous referral to mental health to want to relate to mental health. They are petrified that our sole purpose in life is to take babies. And myself and members of my team, we do sometimes put those calls into action. This is what we do. This is our purpose. It's especially scary when you find out that the social workers in the perinatal mental health team is coming to do your assessment. That was the scary thing. But we have social workers as our lead clinicians because they've got experience with navigating services. Same as our own teams, they're just as valuable as our nursing clinicians. And we allocate according to who's most likely to benefit from the first clinicians and support. So yes, absolutely. This is a really, really key example for somebody being referred to our team to allow that monitoring to happen so that we can catch an early decline if needed. Really important to understand how's mental health now, just because they're not under secondary care services right now, doesn't mean they're not struggling or they've been battling with their symptoms, or that we might need to do something sooner. But also making sure we have like consent. Next case study. So we've not spoken to you already there. We can try to show you that. Is there anyone that's thinking why not was even started in the first place? I can't give you an age actually for this lady. She's 28. Okay, gentleman in the corner.
This was for funding basically, see maybe refer from license to simply invest on.
Absolutely. For this particular example, I'd be really keen to understand who initiates the evaluation of line. Because we shouldn't be starting it in anybody's childbearing position at all, just not. We know, and I know, that there are a number of women under our BSV's care that are prescribed alcohol. The majority of them do have their annual assessment for weakness. Some don't. So understanding why, who, this may actually be a referral to the perinatal team for us to then joint work and go back to their sector mental health team to understand actually why and what other options have they got available. I would be encouraging effective contraception into go back review. Just for my peace of mind, is a male contraceptive effective contraception? There's an oral contraceptive, effective contraception by the Valkyrie guidance. Is the long-acting population, yes, absolutely. Oral contraceptive, or I'm not having sex right now, is not effective contraception. Because things are subject to change very rapidly with oral contraceptive and remembering and libido and sex drive. So reiterating that, but also understanding why this is a concern. That we know valproate can cause loss of pregnancy. We know that valproate can cause major malformations. And that we want to support her to manage her mental health, because her mental health is just as important. She's got bipolar affective disorder. There's an increased risk of postpartum psychosis. What we don't want is her leaving our consultation and saying, oh, just stop it. I'm so concerned about this affecting your pregnancy. I've just stopped the valproate. I've been family for about years. So understanding the benefits of that medication brings the stability that's really and encouraging actually we will put up prevalent, but we need to manage your mental health for any future pregnancy to have best outcomes. Excellent. Is there any cases or situations or scenarios that you would like to know?
The previous one, what would be the best option of treatment in her case?
Depends on what she's having got. We would start from scratch. We would go back and look at the assessments, confirm that bipolar is the most appropriate diagnosis, and then look at what had previously been prescribed for that person. Because we have a lot of challenges with the antiepileptics in pregnancy, we would maybe be thinking about switching to psychotic with more stabilising properties potentially. Which may time healing, maybe like Darwin. Or it would very much depend on all our other risk factors. Is she on any other medication? How well has she been? Bipolar 1, is it bipolar 2? There's a lot of factors to consider, but we potentially be looking at antipsychotics as an option. Although they're not without risk, but
So lamotrigine wouldn't be an option of this.
it could be. It maybe would be one of our first considerations. But anything with SMI, bipolar, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, that is absolutely when you are within the right and primary care to stay, we need a specialist in on this. You are not expected to be making those decisions or have those conversations. It's opening up the conversation and putting in and individual support on, because these are the, this lady, there's a high risk that we have a conversation and then she stops. Because she's prioritising her wants and her needs as I want to get rid of them, I want to have a family, I want all this bipolar stuff behind me. And your support was saying we need to manage your mental health, let's get that looked at, then we'll look at how to take that forward to find out. Yeah. Really good question.
Many people never made it say that you really something.
Sleep hygiene and sleep beautiful. We don't tend to use a lot of supplements on them at all. We very, very rarely recommend them for our food at all. One of the medications we can sometimes use and do use is buprenorphine, but it's completely off license. So we have a conversation with us, sure. But there is also that additional benefit, potentially in the first and second trimester, if we've got some morning sickness, if we've got hyperemesis, we know that buprenorphine is one of the places that we use in treatment of hyperemesis. So in terms of risk of pregnancy, from that safety perspective, we're giving it more risk. Equally, we would not be using promethazine, which in the last 2 to 4 weeks of pregnancy, again, because of this syndrome. So we would be using benzodiazepines, hypnotic times as it takes short term in that very last stage of pregnancy because we and they are really tricky conversations with someone's maybe used to just having a week's with his other phone 2 or 3 times a year. It's always happened. But it is a conversation around actually some technology measures and looking at unpicking some of the reasons. Sometimes it is unpicking unidentified reasons I don't like eating still or OCD. What's the reason for not going to sleep at night? Well, it was always when my bedroom light got turned on that the trauma happened in my situation when we used that. So sometimes symptoms, sleeping medications, hypnosis, then masking something that we probably really fix. If it's needed, if it's causing distress, and we all know that sleep is really, really beneficial to our body and mental health. Yes, we might look at promethazine, but it is a license, and I can't recommend anybody in family care to take that with. If you choose that that's the right medication, that might be a decision that you do to, but I absolutely can't recommend it across the board because it is a license and you don't have that well approach to using promethazine in that way. But it comes back to very much patient-centred decisions. If we have looked at what is the risk, is there a need, we've established the need, and what the options are, it is sometimes just making sure we've got that documentation where we are making decisions that don't have as much evidence, but if that's the right thing to be doing. Maybe not lack of evidence, sorry, it's the guidelines to justify it, but we know that the evidence is there for that to have beneficial.
I asked you about the one mentioned earlier about the medical privilege. Recently, of course, it's like my way, and she saw one of the end things just to compare the future time situation. She was taking methazone, proxen, and sertraline, just on 200 milligrams of sertraline. She was on to, it's really risks with those and things that explains what the risks are with the sertraline, proxen, and she was happy to sort of stop those past the sales, sort of stop them. The sertraline she just meant what told her was it's one of the safer things to do in pregnancy. I'm talking about the slightly increased in heart defects, but it's not much in the background increase. Told her that it would be unlikely that she would be able to reduce all the way down. It might just be a dose reduction rather than completely stopping. And she asked me what sort of plan would you have for reducing it, and I said, well, so it looks guidelines that it would be. If she's going, if she should be on for over 9 months, that would be a slower reduction. So to down to 150, and then after the guidance was 2 to 4 weeks. I said probably leave it as long as you can, so leave it for 4 weeks. It said that I know that at every step of reduction, that's sort of a good time to check in. And so I advise that she speaks to our mental health nurse at every point of reduction. If there is nothing wrong with that, there's anything else I can do. I don't believe so. She's down to severe depression. I don't believe she's experienced those symptoms at the moment. I didn't look to when the last like major like did was or anything like that. I didn't say anything like that. Is there anything I could have done differently or better?
Do you know this? Is it I will be thinking about this, but I'm going to make just the status for president to do question.
Okay.
See,
Yeah.
I would be thinking about when I was her last episode of what are the risks when she has her severely So is it around eating drinking? Is it around this house? Is it just that she shuts away from the people or she can't get to work? Because that's different to stopping eating and drinking.
Okay.
I'd also be thinking about what are the first things that start to tick for her to help her develop a relapse plan. So what do you want to for? And who else can support with that monitoring? There's a really key crucial term of lowest effective dose.
Yeah.
And that's the approach I would take, or do to take within perinatal and both in health with child in. Is it's the lowest dose that works for that person.
Yeah.
You sometimes don't know until you've gone below and you need to go back up. And that's why part of your planning is allowing it. This is where GPs don't disagree. It's challenging primary care, should I say, because I would advocate someone that if their symptoms came back, they have to go to the previous dose straight away. Don't wait to speak to me, don't wait for a phone call, you have got that control. But when as soon as the practical after you've decided to do that,
Yeah.
but if we're on bank holiday weekend and you can feel your symptoms coming back, And we just reduce from 150 and having that person to go straight back up to 200 and then to put a call in for a review at the next working day or next.
Yeah. You think that if they had been a dip and they've gone back up, and then if they've gone down for quite a while and gone back up, it'd be a bit psychosomatic, isn't it? Which at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as they feel better.
But then that's our clinical assessing, which we need to be bringing out what are the evidence of those symptoms
Yes.
in that department. But sometimes being able to empower people to know, because it can be scary, particularly if you've been on drugs for a long time and yet kept you stable, it can be very scary, that thought of a dose reduction. And then sometimes it's about body language. I would rationally go from 200 to 150.
Yeah.
If I then saw someone's face in sheer panic, I was like, oh, we take up the option to go up 175 though, if that's
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
But I know pharmacologically it shouldn't make a difference,
Yeah.
absolutely. But if they are panicking and they are worried, that is then going to be symptoms coming back. So then it also gives them some control over what we're doing. So you can go with those 25 milligrams.
Yeah.
Same when I start medication, if somebody said to me, I've had surgery, it made me really sick, and it's, I mean, you know, I'm putting me back on it again. Started at 50, and can start at 25 and just give it a go. And even when checking the call a week later, and how things are getting on, I was probably sick for those first 2 days, but it's all right.
Bit like
But you-
didn't it, at the start of
Yeah,
that?
that's really progress in this.
Yeah.
But like, what I often, the words that are said are, I'm leaving to pin on me, I'm leaving the nurses to pin in on me, so I knew that if it was still bad, I could talk to you about something. Sometimes it is that plan of what do we do if, more than what we actually decide to do. It's the powerful, it's the empowerment, it's the, this is what we can do. So no, I don't disagree with the plan.
Yeah.
I think having the confidence that if you've identified that somebody has really significant themselves when they're well, having the confidence that as long as they're happy that they are accepting the risks, they want to carry on, come back in a year's time, what's the reason for hospital, through the pregnancy, through the pregnancy period, and ask that question again, is now time to start to away it?
Things, what I'm going to do is just have a bit, you know, think back to the universal, see if one of these facts are what the worst and the worst, it's a previous pregnancy.
There's no harm in trying reduction. I think it's very difficult to say you are going to stop because we don't know. And I think it's keeping it's being honest and saying, well, let's just see how things go. Let's review in 4 weeks, let's review in 2 weeks. You know, you can ring back and triage will manage that process if there's any concerns that you to go and having that really robust follow-up plan, and if things do seriously go on, having them got a number of similar questions to it.
Yeah.
If there was a free to it, that's fine. That helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. I've also included, again, you'll get these through some through, within the slide deck, just some links to some more wider ranging of information around medicines, pregnancy in general. The Tommy's website is really good for planning pregnancy. There is a self-assessment quiz that ladies can do, and it covers all aspects of physical health. So the Tommy's guide is really, really helpful. So what I'd like to leave you with is that when we are talking about the decisions for medicines in pregnancy, there is no set answer. It's the process we go through, weighing up those risks of harm from the medicine, but the benefits of that medicine and reduce the plan in the period. If you are in any doubt, please contact us. And if there's any concern around psychosis, that's an emergency. Ring us in hours straight away, ring SPA out straight away. Please, if you want to take have that on your phone, take a photo of it, please do so. And that's all that's left, just need to say thank you very much for your time. And as much as I hope not to hear from any of you in the future, I would very much love to hear from you if you need answers. Ewan and I had a case that we dealt with a few months ago now. And as much as we have this 28 days turnaround time, how long does it take you to get a response to you initially?
it was like more like back and down. Ladies, I think. She was part, she's a new patient to us, which is better, so she was having to kind of go to. Like, I don't know, everybody on some of those. Yeah, so it was very, very good. And, sometimes it's all moving, but you got, after get more information, something to like, get a bit more. One of the patient and then. And then actually, I'm being able to do a public, and then I'm not. It's not a big deal. It is a very, very complex.
I can't always respond the same day, for my clinics, but I will, or our duty team or myself or our doctor will all try to get back as soon as we can. Seven hours time, we did letters as you but I always try to speak to people and was never less about this like this thing to me, like on and just prevent some patients delays with information filtering. Obviously, that to tell them it's too much. We love to speak well.